interest in going back to work whatsoever. None.
Kim Basinger was never just another Hollywood beauty. She carried an air of mystery that kept audiences guessing. After her rocky split from Alec Baldwin, many assumed the story of her love life was complete. But long before Baldwin, Basinger had been caught up in a romance that blurred the line between art and reality. Traces of it lingered in private recordings, in projects that never saw the light of day, and in the memories of only a select few. Decades later, Basinger finally opened up, pulling back the curtain on a secret she had kept close. And what she revealed left even her most loyal fans stunned. The childhood fear Kim couldn't escape. Some say trauma can move quietly through generations, shaping lives in ways that aren't always obvious. For Kim Basinger, the Academy Award-winning actress once known for her role in Nadine, the shadows of her childhood came from her own mother, Anne Cordell Basinger. On Red Table Talk, Basinger opened up about living with anxiety for as long as she could remember. She described herself as deeply sensitive to the chaos in her home, where arguments and tension were part of daily life. Her mother, whom she remembered as beautiful but troubled, battled her own anxiety. That struggle left a lasting mark on Basinger, who grew up carrying an overwhelming fear that something might happen to her mom. As a little girl, she often skipped school just to be by her mother's side, convinced she needed to protect her. The adults around her began to notice, and eventually she went through a psychological evaluation. It was then that her lifelong struggle with anxiety was first acknowledged. Still, even in those early years, her star quality couldn't be ignored. She was a natural performer, dancing ballet, cheering on the sidelines, and entering pageants. Her striking looks and presence eventually led her to the Ford Modeling Agency, the same launchpad for icons like Jane Fonda, Brooke Shields, and Naomi Campbell. But while the modeling world gave her a fast start, it wasn't her dream. Basinger admitted she hated the job. The constant focus on her appearance made her feel suffocated, as though she was choking under the weight of it all. Bit by bit, she found her way into acting. Guest roles on shows like Charlie's Angels and The $6 Million Man gave her the chance to break away from modeling and move toward what truly excited her. Looking back, she acknowledged that modeling gave her a rare advantage. She never had to struggle to make ends meet when she first arrived in New York. By the time she shifted into acting, she already had financial stability and momentum. When asked what carried her through such a competitive industry, Basinger leaned on words like confidence and drive. She admitted she wasn't fond of the word ambition, but there was no denying she was fueled by determination from the very beginning. From stardom to emotional collapse. In 1980, while working on her very first film, Hard Country, Kim Basinger crossed paths with a makeup artist named Ron Snyder. The two fell into a relationship that lasted 9 years, but from the very beginning, things were rocky. In his memoir, Longer Than Forever, Snyder shared that the day after their wedding, Kim asked him to change his last name to something closer to hers. He went along with it, and they both settled on the surname Britton. Not long after they tied the knot, Ron quit his job to travel with Kim and stay by her side on movie sets. Part of his decision came from wanting to support her as she dealt with frequent panic attacks. But as Kim's career exploded and she became a major Hollywood star, resentment started to creep in, slowly eating away at their marriage. Then came 1986, and the role that would change everything. When Kim signed on for the film 9.5 Weeks, it turned out to be one of her most iconic performances, but it also pushed her to the edge. On screen, she was drawn into an emotionally abusive relationship, and off-screen, the director, Adrian Lyne, deliberately created a tense and hostile environment to get the reactions he wanted. At her audition, Kim was even asked to act like a prostitute begging for money, a degrading task that never made it into the final film. She later admitted that it went against everything she believed in and left her feeling humiliated. But she also recognized that the experience forced her to tap into emotions she had never confronted before. The toll wasn't just emotional, it was physical too. During one scene, she was shoved against a brick wall so forcefully that it left a scar she carried for life. By the time filming wrapped, Kim was completely drained. She wanted nothing to do with anyone involved in the production, not even the crew members who did something as simple as deliver coffee. All of this pressure spilled into her marriage. Kim later admitted that the wait of 9.5 weeks left her so emotionally depleted that she had nothing left to give her husband. And in the middle of that turmoil, Ron made a shocking discovery. While filming No Mercy, Kim had begun an affair with her co-star Richard Gere. The couple tried to patch things up, but it was already too late. Their marriage officially ended in 1989. And to make matters worse, Kim was ordered to pay Ron $9,000 a month in alimony. For a Hollywood star at the height of her fame, it was a stunning twist. And then, right in the thick of her divorce, Kim made a decision that stunned everyone. She didn't just buy a house, she bought an entire town. Along with a group of investors, she spent $20 million to purchase most of Brazelton, Georgia, a small community of about 500 people that covered less than 3 square miles. While Kim wasn't born there, she was a Georgia native from nearby Athens, and the chance to own a piece of her home state was too tempting to pass up. Her vision for Brazelton was ambitious. She wanted to transform the quiet little town into a tourist destination, complete with theme parks, renovated buildings, a movie studio, and even a film festival. But the reality never matched the dream. For a few years, nothing really changed, and eventually Kim decided to cut her losses. She sold the town for only $1 million, swallowing a staggering $19 million loss. The financial fallout didn't just hit her bank account. Several of her family members were tied up in the deal, and when everything collapsed, so did parts of her relationship with them. Looking back on it later, Kim told the Amarillo Globe-News that the experience, as painful as it was, taught her lessons she could never have learned in any classroom. She said it gave her a clearer understanding of people, of what money can drive them to do, and, most importantly, it gave her strength and clarity she carried with her moving forward. How one film nearly ended her career. Cool World isn't a title that most people recognize today, but when it was released in 1992, it caused a major stir. The film tried to capture the same magic as Who Framed Roger Rabbit, blending live action and animation in a noir-style story where humans and cartoons crossed paths. But instead of becoming a hit, it turned into a notorious flop. Much of the trouble behind the movie can be traced back to Kim Basinger's decisions behind the scenes. In the film, Basinger played Holly Wood, a cartoon femme fatale desperate to escape her animated world. Her plan was to seduce the human cartoonist who created her. The director, Ralph Bakshi, was already known for adult-themed animated films that leaned heavily into gritty violence. Cool World was supposed to carry that same edge, but once production was underway, Basinger had a change of heart. She wanted the film toned down so it could be shown to children in hospitals, which was the exact opposite of Bakshi's vision. Tensions quickly boiled over. Bakshi's script was rewritten without his consent, and the atmosphere on set grew so hostile that at one point he and a producer got into a fistfight. By the time the movie was finished, the original concept was lost. Paramount had already poured millions into marketing, even going as far as attaching Hollywood's image to the Hollywood sign. Despite all that, the film bombed and was widely panned. As messy as Cool World was, it wasn't Basinger's biggest controversy of the early 1990s. That came with a different project, one she never even appeared in. Boxing Helena, released in 1993, was an erotic thriller and the debut film from Jennifer Lynch, daughter of director David Lynch. The story centered on a surgeon who amputates a woman's limbs, and even before its release, the disturbing premise sparked protests. The scandal deepened when Basinger, who had once agreed to star in the film, abruptly dropped out. She not only left the project but also criticized the script in public. Her decision triggered a high-profile lawsuit from Mainline Films, the studio behind the movie. They sued her for breach of contract, seeking over $8 million. A jury sided with the studio, leaving Basinger on the hook for damages she simply could not afford. With her net worth estimated at just over $5 million, she filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy to shield her assets. Even after the judgment was reduced, she still owed more than $7 million, along with hefty attorney's fees. During this financial chaos, she was also dealing with her purchase of the small town of Brazelton, Georgia. Once considered a bold investment, the town was sold off at a massive loss of 95%. Eventually, the California Court of Appeals stepped in, overturning the initial verdict on the grounds that the jury instructions had been unclear about whether the damages applied to Basinger herself or her company. The case was finally settled in December 1995 for a fraction of the original amount. The legal battle had dragged her reputation through the mud and nearly destroyed her financially. Looking back, she described the ordeal as a painful and costly education, one that left her disillusioned with how events unfolded. By the mid-1990s, the controversy had finally cooled, but the scars from those years remained with her. The love story that turned volatile. When Kim Basinger and Alec Baldwin first crossed paths, it was on the set of the 1991 romantic comedy The Marrying Man. In the film, Baldwin played a wealthy playboy who finds himself torn between a planned marriage and the allure of a nightclub singer, portrayed by Basinger. Their chemistry on screen turned out to be just as real behind the scenes. Basinger later recalled how quickly things escalated between them. After meeting for dinner to discuss the film, Baldwin surprised her by kissing her and asking if she wanted children. At the time, she was coming out of a difficult separation and hadn't been looking for a new relationship. But Baldwin's persistence drew her in. Director Jerry Reese revealed that even before filming began, Basinger had a sense of where things were headed. When she saw promotional photos of herself and Baldwin side by side, she smiled and softly predicted that they would make a terrific couple. The attraction between them was undeniable, but came with intensity that sometimes tipped into volatility. Crew members recalled an almost electric tension on set, describing it as something that could be felt the moment they were near each other. While sparks were flying, their passion also led to frequent clashes. Basinger once dismissed Baldwin's intensity by calling him psychotic and telling him to focus on the film, while Baldwin vented to friends that she was driving him crazy and declared they would end up married. Despite the off-screen fireworks, their first film together was a disaster. The Marrying Man flopped at the box office, earning just $12 million on a $26 million budget. Critics weren't kind either. Some said the film lacked the very chemistry it needed to work, pointing out that the crazy lust the story relied on simply wasn't convincing. Adding to the damage were reports of behind-the-scenes difficulties. Premiere Magazine labeled the production a production from hell, and Baldwin himself admitted later that the movie was the biggest mistake of his career. Still, the failure didn't keep the two from trying again. They starred together in The Getaway, another project that failed to impress audiences or critics. By then, though, their personal lives had moved forward. They married in August 1993, and 2 years later welcomed their daughter Ireland. Their marriage, like their early romance, was filled with contrasts. Baldwin wanted the family to settle in the Hamptons, but Basinger preferred Los Angeles and refused to relocate. She struggled with agoraphobia and panic attacks, which made public life difficult, while Baldwin thrived in large family settings and was used to the bustle of crowds. The strain of fame only grew after Basinger's Academy Award win for L.A. Confidential, which placed her even more firmly in the spotlight. Publicly, they spoke of each other with a mix of admiration and exasperation. Basinger once admitted that Baldwin had the biggest heart she'd ever known, while also pointing out his fiery Irish Catholic temper. Baldwin, in turn, described her as peculiar and exotic, like a character straight out of a Tennessee Williams play, both maddening and magnetic. In the end, though, that volatile mix proved too much, and their marriage began to come apart. It was early 2001 when news broke that Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger were ending their roughly 7-year marriage. The decision to separate did not come out of nowhere. Kim's father, Don Basinger, later said he had suspected for a year and a half that she was considering leaving. He praised many of Alec's qualities, his generosity and big heart, but pointed to a serious problem, a volatile temper that, according to him, would flare up and reopen old wounds. Kim's divorce filing cited irreconcilable differences and portrayed Alec as domineering. With a child involved, the split quickly became anything but tidy. The couple plunged into a protracted public custody fight that consumed headlines and strained family life. Their daughter, Ireland Baldwin, found herself caught in the crossfire, sometimes pulled into the drama in ways no child should be. most famously when a private voicemail in which Alec berated her was leaked. Financial matters were resolved relatively quickly, but custody disputes lingered. Alec has recounted that the custody battle lasted far longer than the monetary settlement, stretching for years, and that the media's attention made the process even more damaging to his relationship with Ireland. As part of the settlement, he attended anger management therapy, and for a period his time with Ireland was restricted. Now, the official war between Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger may have ended in court, but the tension between them lingered long after. The most explosive moment came when TMZ released a voicemail Baldwin had left for his then 11-year-old daughter, Ireland. In the heated message, Baldwin lashed out, calling her a thoughtless little pig and venting his frustrations at both her and Basinger. He went on to complain about being humiliated for the last time and losing patience with the constant struggle to reach her by phone. The outburst was so alarming that a judge temporarily restricted his visitation rights with Ireland. Surprisingly, Ireland herself seemed unfazed by the storm that followed. Speaking to Page 6, she brushed it off as no big deal, explaining that she simply called her dad back and apologized for missing his call. Over time, she even learned to joke about the incident publicly, making light of what the media had turned into a scandal. Baldwin, for his part, later issued an apology, admitting he lost his temper but also pointing to years of what he described as parental alienation that had pushed him to the edge. Baldwin has been candid about how the lawsuits and public scrutiny drove him into a dark place, even admitting he considered suicide as his mental health declined. What ultimately pulled him back, he said, was his daughter, his fear of how his absence would shape her life. Basinger, meanwhile, revisited that chapter during an appearance on Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith. She described their split as intense, very public, and constantly magnified by the media. Raising Ireland in the middle of that storm was already hard, but co-parenting with Baldwin brought its own challenges. With a half-smile, she admitted Alec was difficult, but stressed that with time, everyone managed to move forward. Sitting beside her, Ireland let out a small laugh, a quiet sign that the roughest edges of the past had finally softened. Basinger also found her own way of closing that chapter. Instead of holding on to her engagement ring or returning it, she decided to auction it off. The Tiffany & Company diamond ring sold for nearly $60,000, with all proceeds going to an animal welfare group that protects elephants, lions, and other wild creatures. Still, the divorce left lasting marks. Baldwin's career carried on largely unaffected, while Basinger's professional momentum slowed after their 2002 split. For her, the experience wasn't just personal. It reshaped how the world saw her and altered the trajectory of her career. How Hollywood turned its back on her. In 2002, Kim Basinger stepped into one of her most unexpected roles when she played the mother of Eminem in 8 Mile. The film was semi-autobiographical, and its theme song, Lose Yourself, went on to win an Academy Award. For Basinger, it was a smart career move. She reunited with director Curtis Hanson, who had previously directed her in LA Confidential, and she delivered a performance that critics praised. Roger Ebert noted that she captured the perfect balance between love and frustration as the mother of a troubled son. But the role also came with an unflattering side effect. By the early 2000s, Basinger began to notice a shift in how Hollywood saw her. She was being pushed into the same box many actresses eventually find themselves in, playing mothers and wives. In interviews, she admitted that no one had ever seen her as a mother on screen, and then suddenly, that was all anyone wanted from her. She pointed out how narrow-minded the industry could be, saying that casting directors rarely thought beyond stereotypes. To them, she was now the default option for any maternal role, no matter the story. Her personal life didn't help matters. In 2006, her ex-husband, Alec Baldwin, dragged her back to court, accusing her of violating their custody agreement. The case made headlines, with People magazine covering every detail. She pleaded not guilty but faced fines as high as $12,000. With her messy divorce, her rumored romance with Prince, and other short-lived relationships constantly in the tabloids, Basinger's image began to look complicated and unstable. For studios, that was a risk. Hollywood has always operated on a double standard, And while male actors could weather scandals without career consequences, Basinger's public drama hurt her opportunities. Still, she tried to pivot. In 2008, she tested out a new role behind the camera as an executive producer. The film was While She Was Out, a low-budget thriller from director Susan Montfort. Basinger also starred in it as a woman whose ordinary Christmas Eve trip to the mall spirals into chaos after she leaves a rude note on a car parked across two spaces. The car belonged to a gang of young men who then spend the rest of the night trying to kill her. The movie was an over-the-top attempt to cast her as an action lead, echoing what Taken had just done for Liam Neeson that same year. But instead of launching a new era for Basinger, it fell flat. With a $6 million budget, the movie barely made $29,000 and was quickly pulled from theaters. She never tried producing again. By 2013, her acting career had slowed, so she returned to her first love, modeling. At 60, she signed with IMG Models, the same agency representing her daughter, Alec Baldwin. The deal was rare for someone her age, and Basinger knew it. She said she felt privileged to still have opportunities when most women in Hollywood were quietly pushed aside. Around the same time, she hinted at a return to acting, teasing that new projects were on the horizon. 2 years later, she reappeared in The 11th Hour, a dark psychological drama directed by Anders Morgenthaler. She played a businesswoman unraveling after multiple miscarriages, but critics tore it apart. Reviewers called it pretentious, overwrought, and even meaningless. Rex Reed went as far as to suggest that Basinger had forgotten how to act. The film's dismal 13% score on Rotten Tomatoes made it clear this was no comeback moment. Still, Basinger kept working. In 2017, she landed her biggest project in years, 50 Shades Darker. She played Elena Lincoln, the former lover and mentor of Christian Grey. The role came with heavy anticipation, but for Basinger, it was simply another job. She admitted she only took the part because her daughter insisted. Alec Baldwin had read the books and told her mother that the character represented power, not submission. Initially hesitant, Basinger eventually embraced the role, seeing it as a chance to play a woman who influenced and guided from a position of strength. She returned briefly in the sequel, 50 Shades Freed, in 2018. A star's struggle beyond the spotlight. In Hollywood, looks are often the first thing people notice. And for Kim Basinger, that was especially true. Early in her career, she was cast as the beautiful love interest, the mysterious femme fatale, or the lead in steamy thrillers. Her appearance played a major role in her rise to fame. But Hollywood has always had a double standard, where aging affects women's careers far more harshly than men's. As time passed, Basinger aged out of the roles that had once been her signature. She tried to pivot, exploring new types of characters, but critics and industry insiders felt she didn't have the dramatic range for those parts. The result was a steady decline in major offers, and eventually, she found herself in lower-budget projects and straight-to-video releases. Her reputation rests largely on a handful of huge successes like Batman and LA Confidential, films that were both box office hits and critical triumphs. Outside of those, however, her track record was inconsistent. Rotten Tomatoes data paints the picture clearly. Across her career, she's had far more misses than hits. Only 6 of her films earned praise from both critics and audiences, while 26 were widely considered failures. Among the worst was her 2000 thriller Bless This Child, which barely avoided a 0% score from critics. Still, for years, the negative reviews didn't slow her down. What really mattered was money, and Basinger's films made plenty of it. Producers didn't care how critics responded, as long as audiences showed up. But when the box office returns began to dry up, so did the big roles. Later in her career, Basinger reflected on the industry and admitted she felt out of place in today's Hollywood. She came up in a time before social media, when stars were more mysterious and didn't have to share every detail of their lives. She preferred that era, saying that the industry's obsession with constant exposure had taken things in a direction she didn't respect. Privacy has always been important to her, and she never liked letting the public in too much. Aging, however, gave her perspective. She admitted that the best part of growing older was learning to let go of what people thought of her. Despite once being seen as the ultimate Hollywood, she confessed that she was more self-conscious then than she is now. Looking back, she wished she had relaxed and enjoyed it more. The broader industry also came under fire in 2017 with the Harvey Weinstein scandal, which exposed systemic abuse and inequality. Basinger didn't share her own personal stories, but she made it clear she had seen the darker side of the business. She called Hollywood's reputation as a liberal and progressive space misleading, pointing out that beneath the surface, the realities were shocking. Her solution to inequality was bold and controversial. She suggested that women should collectively refuse to have children until real change was made. She argued that women had far more power than they realized, and if they united, they could force the world to take them seriously. She even went as far as saying that women could stop together, believing that such a stance would shift the balance of power and allow women to dominate. For Kim Basinger, Hollywood's shine had long since worn off. What remained was an honest perspective from someone who had experienced both the highest peaks of fame and the struggles that came when the industry turned its back. Before death, Kim Basinger revealed the truth about her affair. It had been a while since the world heard much from Kim Basinger, especially after her highly publicized split from Alec Baldwin in 2002. Looking back, Basinger admitted during a Red Table Talk interview that their relationship was filled with challenges. Baldwin, however, painted the picture in far harsher terms. In an interview with The Guardian, he described the divorce as a war, saying that between 2000 and 2006, he was so consumed by the pain of litigation that he could barely remember those years at all. But long before Baldwin came into the picture, Basinger was already turning heads for her connection with another star, Prince. Their bond wasn't just a Hollywood rumor, it played out through music that left fans and critics buzzing. In 1989, Prince released the scandal for the Batman soundtrack, and alongside the track's sultry tone came the surprise of Basinger's involvement. She didn't sing, but her presence was unmistakable in the recording, and the chemistry between her and Prince was hard to ignore. Their collaboration didn't stop there. Around that same time, the two reportedly worked on a full album titled Hollywood Affair. The project was never given an official release, but the relationship behind it was real enough that Basinger even left Hollywood for a period to live with Prince in Minneapolis. Family pressure eventually pushed them apart, but by then their creative work together had already left its mark. Though Hollywood Affair never saw the light of day in the US, it surfaced years later. In 1997, the album leaked in Germany and later spread online, keeping their collaboration alive for die-hard fans. By then, Basinger had already stepped away from music. The attempt at building a singing career never gained traction, and she quickly shifted her focus back to acting. When Prince passed away in 2016, Basinger reflected on their time together with fondness. She spoke about the brilliance of his talent and described their relationship as a special chapter in her life, one without boundaries or restrictions. To her, it was simply a beautiful moment in time, filled with memories she carried forward. What many might not realize is that the scandal wasn't their only project together. And when it came to Basinger's love life in those years, Prince wasn't the only famous musician linked to her name.